Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and I'm the airline pilot. Let's speak about the aviation accident with the Yeti Airlines ATR 72-500 that happened in Pokhara Airport. I have some experience flying ATRs. I've flown all of the modifications of those airplanes. I've flown them for 7 years, starting from ATR 42, ATR 72-500, ATR 72-600. So I know what I'm talking about when I speak about that particular airplane type. We're going to read out the information that we know so far, and then I'll make some sort of my conclusions, but I'll try not to speculate because many of the people lost their lives in that aviation accident. So a Yeti Airlines avionics that transport the original ATR 72-500 registration. You see this registration performing flight YT-691 from Kathmandu to Pokhara, Nepal, with 68 passengers on board. The capacity of the airplane is around 70 passengers, depends on modification, but the airplanes I was flying, there were 70 passengers capacity. 4 crew members were on board, which is usual. You need to have 1 flight attendant for 50 passengers, so there should be 2 flight attendants and at least 2 pilots, captain and the first officer. The airplane was in final approach on runway 12. Then aircraft stalled, impacted the ground between the old Pokhara Airport and new Pokhara International. It fell into ravine and burst into flames about 1.12 nautical miles ahead of the runway threshold. 68 bodies have so far been recovered from the crash site, and from what I know, the search and rescue team continued to search for the survivors. Unfortunately, my friends, with that dramatic crash, there could be no survivors for that accident. And we have the list of the nationalities that were on board from different countries, mostly Nepalese, then Indians, Russians, Koreans, 1 Australian, Argentinian, Irish and French citizens. Investigation has already been started and the French investigation team will participate at that. What is interesting that Pokhara New International Airport was opened just a couple of weeks ago on 1st of January 2023, so the first day of this year. And we have the video of the eyewitness. Just a random guy was filming on his phone, and let's watch the video. There's the ATR airplane on approach, and you can see it has some little bank on the left. And let's watch the video. I turn the sound off. See that airplane banks on a wing on the left side of it and just crashed. We call it stall. Usually it's connected with significant loss of the airspeed, rising the angle of attack, the angle between the airflow and the wing of the airplane. So if that angle is high, if the airspeed is low, you'll have that event. And if the altitude is very low, you'll not have the time basically to get the airplane out of the stall condition and stabilize it. I would say that the ATR is quite robust for the stalls. It has some sort of the systems to warn pilots like stick shaker and also stick pusher. But first of all, pilots should continue monitoring their airspeed, and it's very important to monitor it during the approach. So far we are in lack of the flight data that only can be found in flight data recorders, black boxes. I'm sure that they already been recovered by the team or in a process to be recovered, and I'm sure that they will be decoded and we're gonna see the information about the airspeed and other stuff. Also, the cockpit voice recorder is very important, so we may hear the communication between the pilots in the cockpit. So basically it is it for the video. Later on you just see some of the flowers on the balcony, and we don't see the actual crash, which is I think good because it could be disturbing for the many of the viewers. But we have photos of it, and then I first time saw that door over here, I understood that it was the ATR probably, and later on, yes, the information confirmed that it's the ATR, so it's the fairing for the landing gear. And this is the part of the fuselage. You can see that the airplane is totally demolished, and even then it falls from this kind of low altitude. You see the destruction is massive. And here's the map of the city, my friends. Here you can see the old airfield. It has the narrow runway, which is much shorter compared to the new airfield. Wider runway, it's longer. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the maps for that airport. I mean, aviation maps like Jepson. They haven't been published in internet, so we have to have the official Jepson Flight Deck Pro or something to download those maps for this particular region. I have this software, but it allows me to download only the maps for the European region. Here in the circle, there's the approximate final position of the airplane, which is reported to be a little bit more than 1 mile away from the runway threshold. As you can see, the new runway has the different course compared to the previous one. So this is the previous runway and this is the new runway, and to approach from this side you need to fly all across the city. For now it's hard to say what system pilots used when they approached that runway. There could be ILS system, which is very precise, and there could be non-precision system, which is also okay, and we use them sometimes, and there could be also visual approach. There could be some issues with the ILS systems. In some of the airports that I fly, I sometimes experience the glide slope or localizer deviations. It also depends on the traffic in particular airport, and there were some of the cases in my flight career that deviation of the glide slope was so high that I had to disconnect the autopilot and correct the glide slope. If you experience those deviations, you have to report it to the air traffic controller, and later on, if they confirm it, they may put it to the notices to airmen, NOTAMs. And the crew that is preparing for the flight will be familiar with the glide slope deviation for particular runway in particular airfield. And ILS system also should be certified for every runway. So if you're gonna open the airfield, if you're gonna put the ILS system, you need also to hire the test pilots with a test airplane that will fly and check the deviation of the ILS system. If everything is okay, you'll have your certificate. That certificate got the temporary validation, and each year you have to go through the certification of particular ILS system. And those constructions near to the airfield buildings, they also play a great role. And if you have deviations, you have to correct the equipment for the ILS system to adjust the signal of it. So the more obstructions you have in the area, the more the chance for you to tune the ILS signal for the particular runway. And there is also the chance to have the fluctuating signal. Why am I speaking about the ILS system? Because let's watch the video again. Okay, I will remove my drawing. Let's watch this video from YouTube. Then you see this airplane is flying. You also may see that how it rises the nose just before stalling. So this is very high altitude and very high angle of attack, let's say. Well, the airplane banks towards our side. It's complicated to say the exact angle, but I must say that it's very high, very unusual, because mostly you have a little bit negative or sometimes zero pitch for the ATR on approach. I'm speaking about this angle between the longitudinal axis of the fuselage and the surface, let's say. So this is the pitch of the airplane, which is quite high in that case. The airplane may rise up the nose and follow the glide slope. So for this, you need to disconnect immediately and correct your pitch, just not to let your airspeed to drop. So the more pitch you have, the more drag you have, and your airspeed will go down very fast. I just want to spot the moment then they start to pitch up. So here it is, then they start pitch up a little, and they continue it for maybe 2 seconds or a little bit less, maybe 1.5, and then they lost the airspeed and start to bank. And if you have this high bank, you need lots of the altitude to recover. Obviously from this altitude, it's no go. There is also the possibility that they had the engine failure, but I can see that propellers were rotating during this moment, and it's very hard to say whether engines were working good or not. And this is the information about that particular airplane that crashed. It started its career from the Kingfisher Airlines back in 2007, so it's 15.5 years old. After it moved to South Africa in Yeti Airlines, then to Taiwan Nok Air, and finally to Nepal Yeti Airlines. In Yeti Airlines, it was flying for around 4 years. Here we also have some of the photos of that particular airplane by the time it was flying in Nok Air, but no photos from Yeti on this website. We also get the flight record on Flight Radar 24, so the flight started from Kathmandu. We have even the taxi route, departure and trajectory of the airplane, but somehow it finishes here, not reaching even the destination airport of Pokhara. I wonder why. Maybe this part was just cut in a purpose of investigation or something, but clearly there is no any ADS-B out data from the airplane transponder. So we are in lack of the information about the approach it conducted here. So we cannot say whether it was the eyeless approach or visual approach for me for this moment, all right? But the investigation team will have the access for everything, and obviously they will know. On the right side, you can see the cockpit image of the ATR 72-500. And here on the left, I hope you can see it because of my image, it's the new modern cockpit of the ATR 72-600. So I've flown both modifications, 500 and 600. Obviously 600, it's much better for the pilot, it has more information, but in general the design is similar if we speak about the systems, just the interface is different, but obviously 600 gives pilot more options for the situational awareness. 600 version also might be equipped with vertical navigation tool, which you will not find on 500 version. So without the VNAV function on 500, usually we use the vertical speed for vertical navigation, and you need to count your profile, but also automatic functions help pilot to do so. Here in the panel you can see the old style steam gauges, but at the same time modern CDUs, control display units. The logic of those units are very different between 600 version and 500 version. The screens are much smaller, and the speed monitoring goes with separate flight instrument, the airspeed indicator. On the ATR 600, you have all of the instruments in one, in common display, or PFD, the primary flight display that also increases the situational awareness of the flight crew. Because of the new cockpit ergonomics, ATR chose the new variant, and they finished production of the ATR 72-500s, but the airplane mostly is the same. So the main change, I would say, not the only change, but the main one is the cockpit and electronic systems. In general, ATRs are quite reliable airplanes. I hadn't had any issues flying those, but at the very beginning, at the first versions, they had the problems with the de-icing system. Here you can see the rubber boots. What they do, that basically they inflate and crush the ice, and they extend those boots on the upper part of the wing after they found out they are not so effective as they thought. But also it has the T-type of the empennage. Empennage is the tail part. Here you can see the stabilizer and the elevator on the top of the vertical stabilizer, and it could be shadowed by the wing on the high angles of attack. Basically, you just create the obstacle and you may shadow the stabilizer, and that will create the pitch down moment. And as we saw in the video, there was no pitch down moment. So if you get close to the critical alpha, first time you hear the stick shaker, it means that pilots needs to reduce the angle of attack, pull down a little. And if it continues, there is the system that will do it for you, stick pusher. It will push the stick down, basically the control column with the yoke, and the nose airplane will go down automatically. As you can see, this is kind of smart airplane, and as I said to you, I was flying in the icing conditions, heavy rains, everything, and I hadn't had any issues with that. And what about the stall speeds of the ATR? Well, here we have the flight crew operation manual, and here you can see the graph, the speed on the left and the weight in tons on the bottom to the right. And here we have the line shows the flap 30 gear down configuration that should be maintained during the landing. So this is the maximum certified weight, also depends on the airplane configuration. And let's say for the landing, it's fully loaded airplane with some of the fuel. It could be somewhere around here. And this is the stall speed, but your approach speed should not equal the stall speed. Otherwise, it's very unsafe, so you have to have the margin, especially for the icing conditions. Yes, in the case we have the normal conditions, skies were clear, but you have also to have the margin to avoid the stall. You might find the approach speeds in the special software that is certified to be used on the airplane, and also you might find them in a quick reference handbook which we have on board of the airplanes. So if you're somewhere below this speed, it means that your airplane is stalling and out of control. Let me show you one more video. It's Ilyushin 112, the Russian military airplane that crashed in the Russian Federation because it had the problems with the engine. engine fire or maybe engine severe damage as well. So let's see the video, because the outcome looks very similar to our case. The configuration of the airplane is very similar to ATR, as you can see, maybe closer to ATR 42. And let's see what will happen to that airplane. So it got the engine fire. For now everything is okay, but at some point you'll see the huge bank. So it's now starts to bank because this engine creates significant drag. Probably the propeller is not feathered. Not feathered, it means that it creates significant drag for the wing, and the other wing will just increase the bank here. You can see that it's increasing and increasing as in our case, and the outcome is very similar. So I would not exclude the problems with the engine, not the engine fire, but it could be the engine failure without auto feather. But there's the system on the ATR that is responsible for the feathering of the propeller, and let me show it to you. This is the flight crew training manual of the ATR, and here you can see on top it's the ATPCS system, automatic takeoff power control system, which works also during the approach. The function of the system is to feather the propeller of the failed engine and increase the power on the live engine. But during the approach, only the auto feather function is working, and you have to increase the go-round power manually. This system helps pilots, but we also train to deal without it during our flight simulator trainings. And as we saw in the video so far, there were no any visual issues with the engines. However, it could be one of the reasons. And one more similar case that also happened to the ATR 72-500 in Taiwan. They had the problems with the engine. They created actually one of the problems. You can see the airplane is banking, and it hit the car, it hit the water, and some of the passengers survived that accident. There it was the problem with auto feathering, and somehow one of the propellers feathered and pilots shut down the live engine. So basically airplane was flying with no power and finally stalled. And now we have just information in general about the case, no particular details, but the reasons I told you: the loss of the airspeed. Why it happened could be the problems with the engine, could be the problems with the glide slope, and also simple problems with managing the airplane by pilot's mistake. And there is also the video from the passenger's perspective, but I don't want to show it to you because it doesn't give any kind of information and could be disturbing for many of the viewers. And I want to say again that throughout my career flying ATR 72-600, 500 and 200, ATR 42-300, I hadn't had any kind of big issues with that airplane. It is well designed and I would say a robust airplane. So why it happened, investigation will show to us. But what I want to say that the ATR is usually the first airplane for many of the commercial pilots, and usually you have experienced captain and not very experienced first officer. This applies not only for the ATR but for the small jets in United States, but in Europe you can also have newcomers for the Airbus and for Boeing 737. It doesn't mean that the new pilots are bad. No, they're fully certified to fly the machine, but you need some experience for promotion, let's say, and in non-standard situations experience matters. My friends, thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry, it could be disturbing for some sort of the images. I'm gonna keep you updated on situation about this crash. Stay awesome and safe skies to you.